bringing attention to the destruction of the 3 World Trade Center towers in New York City on September 11th, 2001, and a whole lot more. This is 9/11 Free Fall. Good evening, everyone. This is Andy Steele. Thank you once again for tuning in. Tonight, the guest is Dave Fura. He is an activist, an engineer, and a writer for AE 9/11 Truth. And in the interview, we'll talk about the Good for America pamphlet that's available for download at ae911truth.org, why it's so important, why that message is so important. And the interview goes into an interesting discussion of a hypothetical that I want to kind of throw out to the audience. I want everybody to write into me and let me know your opinion on it. But the question comes up, if 9/11 had happened in 1985 or even 1990, before the internet had really taken off, would we even really have a 9/11 truth movement? I mean, I know the internet has played an important role in it. And the question is it the sole reason that this movement exists right now? What would the 9/11 truth movement look like if 9/11 had taken place in 1985? Would it be limited to a few shortwave radio shows that hardly anyone hears, or would people still find a way to get the message out, to spread the word? You're opening up a can of worms on a discussion like that, but I want that can of worms open. I want to hear from you. And it's just like when you read a science fiction story where you explore a world where maybe the South won the Civil War, or where maybe the atomic bomb hadn't been invented. How would things be different? So, kind of fun to speculate on. So you can write it to me at 911freefall.com in the contact box and let me know what you think on that topic. All right, we got some exciting news. The High Rise Safety Initiative, and if you're a first-time listener, you can listen to more episodes about this in the archives. This is a ballot measure that will appear in November 4th, or that they were trying to get the signature so it could appear on the November 4th ballot in New York City. And if it gets approved by the voters, it will require the New York City Department of Buildings to investigate high-rise building collapses in New York City that occurred on or any time after September 11th, 2001. Now, this excludes the Twin Towers. However, it does apply to World Trade Center Building 7. This is that 47-story steel frame high-rise that fell allegedly because of fire in 6.5 seconds, even though no steel frame high-rise has ever done that before or after that day. We talk about it every week on this show. Well, like I said, the signatures first had to be collected, and they got them. This is from the website. We are proud to announce that earlier today we submitted over 67,000 signatures to the City of New York, 37,000 more than the requisite number for a charter amendment to be submitted to voters at this November's election. If passed by voters on November 4th, it would require the City Department of Buildings to investigate the collapse of World Trade Center 7 and any future high-rise collapses. We would like to extend our deepest gratitude to everybody who contributed blood, sweat, and tears and hard-earned dollars towards this remarkable achievement. Together, we did it. And it says in the What Lies Ahead section that even though that they've submitted the petition, they want to get 33,000 more signatures to submit on September 4th, forcing this initiative onto the ballot in case the City Council doesn't take action or votes against including the measure on the ballot. And then it goes off into some of the legal mumbo-jumbo. Now, already the media is spinning, attempting to remind everybody or tell everybody that this is a conspiracy group that wants this building investigated, that it's truthers. And they want to get that in everybody's mind and letting everybody know that it's somehow undesirable to support this measure. And even the mayor of New York is weighing in on it. We have this from Crane's Insider. I guess this is some kind of news service. But the story is, de Blasio blasts 9/11 Truther ballot initiative. And it starts off, Mayor Bill de Blasio on Thursday denounced an effort by an offshoot of the 9/11 Truth movement to force the city to investigate the collapse of 7 World Trade Center during the terrorist attack 13 years ago. And they always make sure that they put the word terrorist attack in there so that they remind you what the official story is and to not question it. Now, this is what the mayor said. From what I've heard, it's absolutely ridiculous. And it's inappropriate after all the suffering that went on 9/11 and since. It seems to be this is a very insensitive and inappropriate action. And I very highly doubt Mr. de Blasio really knows much about the topic, but he knows which way the political wind blows. He knows where his bread is buttered. But it doesn't really matter what Mr. de Blasio has to say, because it's up to the voters. So the High-Rise Safety Initiative Group is working hard. You can still help out. Go to highrisesafetynyc.org and you can find out more. But congratulations to Ted Walter and all of the people involved in that effort. That is monumental. That is exciting. And one more point I want to go over before I play the interview, just a quick matter of housekeeping here for the show. I am aware that for a little while, for at least a few weeks, the downloads of the shows have been down from the tab that says download MP3s of the episodes. The SendSpace account that I had them listed under was inexplicably canceled on me, and unfortunately before I could resolve it, all of my shows were deleted from that page, so they were gone, and I didn't have time to re-upload them. What I've done is I've uploaded all of the shows to the Internet Archive. Internet Archive is a really interesting place to go hang out. They have a lot of great historical audios, books, things like that. They're all in the public domain. My show's in the public domain too. So I uploaded it there. So now at 911freefall.com, I have a tab. You can click that, and that will take you to the Internet Archives listing of the show, where you can click on each individual episode. They'll be listed in order, and they each have their own individual page, and you can click on and you can download it from there. So if anybody has any problems with that, let me know, but that is how you can download this show and listen to it on your MP3 player or while you're driving or whatever. So that problem has been resolved. All right, what we're going to do now is what we do every week. We're going to take 10 seconds of silence to remember the victims of 9/11 and their families and all the people who died in the wars that followed 9/11. We're going to do that starting now. And that is 10 seconds. Dave Fura received a BSE degree from the University of Michigan, an MS from Purdue University, and a PhD from the University of Washington, all in electrical engineering. His military background consists of 6 years in the Marine Corps Reserve, and he currently works as a computer engineer involved in the modeling, design, and validation of system-on-a-chip computer chips. He is active with the verification and action group teams of architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth. He's also a writer for that organization and a very passionate activist. Along with myself and other members of the writing team, he collaborated on the latest Good for America pamphlet that I talked about a few weeks on the show. Dave, welcome to 9/11 Freefall.
Oh, great. Thank you, Andy. Thank you for having me here.
Now, I want you to elaborate on your background, anything that I may have left out, but I want our audience to know more about you, where you're coming from professionally, before we get to the 9/11 issue.
Okay, so as you said, I got my bachelor's degree from the University of Michigan back in the 80s. After that, I went to work for a while down in Dallas, Texas for Texas Instruments for about 2.5 years, and came back up to the Midwest to get my master's degree. Was doing my PhD there, passed the qualifier, when I basically got burned out of the campus life and decided I needed to get back to work. So I drove out to Seattle and worked for Boeing for a while, and picked up my PhD there at the University of Washington. And since that time, I've worked for a variety of startup companies and done a lot of contract work, worked for Intel, and been pretty much run-of-the-mill computer engineer working in the design and verification of computer chips.
Now, it says you were also in the military, Marine Corps. What was that like?
Well, I was 19, and I just needed to find out what it was like. I was looking for something else to sort of supplement what I was doing. After my freshman year at Michigan, I went to boot camp for the summer, And I'm happy with my service there. I got a taste of it. I decided that I didn't want to do it full time the rest of my life, but I'm proud of my service in the Marine Corps. I really do believe it's a fine organization.
Absolutely, and regardless of whatever's going on politically and the whole and the actions that politicians do, a lot of these men who go to serve do so because they think they're doing the right thing and they genuinely want to protect America. So a lot of great people get turned out of the military. Now, 9/11, the issue we talk about every week on the show, the controlled demolitions of the towers in New York. What made you wake up to the reality of what happened in New York on 9/11, and what made you decide to take action?
Oh, yeah, good question. So on 9/11, I was actually running a startup, and so I remember driving into the parking lot, hearing on the radio about the attack, either the planes hitting or the towers coming down, I forget which. But and I recall that on that day they brought a TV into the lobby of the office building I was working at, and people were, milling around all day watching it. And even then, I was just looking at it sort of, once in a while. I was too busy to even focus on it at all. And so I don't even recall Building 7 going down. I mean, I didn't recall it from that day, and I hardly remember even looking at the towers going down. It wasn't until about 2008 when I was on a blog. I think it was an economics blog of some kind, and somebody there posted a link to the AE 9/11 Truth website. And so I went over there, and at that time they had the latest documentary of that day up, which was Blueprint for Truth. And so I watched it, and I remember at that time thinking that this is probably true, what Richard Gage is saying, but I still have a little bit of doubt because I haven't really dug into it and I haven't seen what the other side said yet. So I sort of put it on hold for a while. And then later on, David Chandler published his 3-part video on the free fall of Building 7, and that was also put on the main website. And after seeing that, well, first of all, it did two things for me. First of all, I saw that NIST was admitting a free fall. And that was very important to me because there's no more dispute about free fall anymore. And the second thing was watching the NIST engineers up there, and it's so obvious that they're lying, and based on their body language and also by what they're saying, it's total nonsense. And at that point, I was pretty sure that the official story was wrong. But even then, I was not really going to do much about it. I was not really an activist at that time. It was just slowly over time that it, starts to nag at you a little bit. You go, I just need to do this. This is too important here. This is not like, a corrupt dog catcher or something. This is actually a pretty serious matter here. And sometime in 2009, I signed the petition, and then I don't know. It's been kind of gradually, growing on me ever since. Back in 2011, I got a phone call. This was back in August before the anniversary, and they're looking for people to do, some volunteer work to support some of the 10th anniversary activities. And so I signed up for that. I was calling a bunch of people around the state of Oregon, and I found out that I actually like to talk to people about 9/11. And so from that point on, we formed an action group up here in Portland, and we've been doing things like running library events, and we've had Richard Gage here 3 times, and been doing other stuff since then.
And it goes to show you, like we always say, that one man can make a difference. And I'm talking right now, first about David Chandler, who simply asked a question and caused the entire string to unravel for NIST and the official story of Building 7, at least the first steps of it, because of what you just cited, that they were forced to admit to the free fall. Their body language, their obvious lying from all the stumbling that Shyam Sunder and John Gross did, really was very telling for a lot of the people that watched it that day, for the people that would watch it in YouTube clips for the years afterwards. So people can absolutely make a difference, and David Chandler wasn't working for a major TV network or any major scientific foundation. He's a simple physics teacher that asked a question. And then yourself, of course, just with all of the work that you do and as it's slowly built. You sound a lot like just our average listeners, folks, who may not know what they can do, who may be awakened to this for the first time, but are looking for some way to make an impact, for some way to create their own dent in the official story. And a lot of times it's just starting small, and then as you start small, you make bigger and bigger steps, and then eventually you're making a huge impact, and you don't even know what you're doing is making a huge impact. Sometimes the things you start to do, you don't know what the results are going to be until after it happens, and then you stand back and say, "Oh my God, did I do this?" So you mentioned the free fall of Building 7. Am I safe in saying that's the strongest evidence for you that really told you this was a controlled demolition? Is there something else that really caught your eye?
Free fall of Building 7 for me is the first piece of evidence I ever talk about with anybody. And in fact, you don't even need to go beyond free fall of Building 7. Until somebody can debunk that, there's no point in talking about number 2, number 3, and down the list. In fact, you don't even really want to go down the list, because as soon as you put together a list of 10, 20 items that, are evidence for controlled demolition, they always pick on your weakest argument. So you spend all of your time defending your weakest argument, which I learned in the beginning not to do. So Building 7, free fall, and also keep in mind what the government said about the free fall. I think it's important to know both sides of the story. The typical, spiel you get from people in the truth movement is that if you have free fall, some external force is required to remove all 82 support columns, because the top part crushing the bottom coming down would have had to slow the top down. It couldn't have been free fall, which is true. But the government didn't, these are smart guys who built these reports. Shyam Sundar got a PhD from MIT. John Gross got his from Cornell. These are not dummies. But they knew they couldn't just say that these scattered office fires, some of which, columns weren't even affected by any office fires, and some, were hot, and some had already cooled off. So they were all at different temperatures. You couldn't say that those fires impacted all the support columns in the same way, causing them all to lose, all of their resistance at the same time, and then to get the free fall. So they didn't say that. So they had this elaborate scheme where they claim that the internal part of the building basically collapsed with no, visible evidence of that from the outside, and then after that, the perimeter columns all buckled 7 feet before going into free fall. And they say, waving their arms, that buckled columns have negligible resistance, and that's their explanation for free fall. So you have to, ask, well, is the model valid that NIST is basing this all on? And what have they done to show that the model is valid? And have they, it's not even available for inspection by, independent engineers, for one thing, so we can't even look at it. The animations that they show of the model don't match the real videos. And then now we have conclusive proof that the model is not accurately portraying the structure of the building, based on what some of the engineers have found by looking at the structural drawings. So you can easily make the case now that the NIST model is an invalid model, and invalid models don't produce evidence. So you can make a good case that there's no explanation from the government side, to justify the free fall being caused by fire. So free fall of Building 7 is an airtight case. You don't really need to go anywhere past that if you don't want to.
Well, why should they have to give you the information? Don't you trust them? I'm kidding.
Right.
No,
exactly.
Now, and you talked earlier about why this is important, and I like what you said. It's not like a corrupt dog catcher, and because I don't really know what a corrupt dog, how much damage he could really do. I guess it would be a big deal to the dogs. But 9/11 is very important. I know that. The audience knows that. But why is it still important? I mean, here we are, over a decade past. We have kids coming up who probably barely remember that even happening now. Why is it so important, in your opinion, to focus on it so many years after this event took place?
Well, the obvious reasons that people cite, including the fact that we have at least an amplified war on terror, which is excused by the events of 9/11, which includes all these invasions and occupations overseas, continuing drone attacks with no declaration of war, and of course loss of civil liberties at home, and all the money we're spending on the wars overseas, and building up the police state at home. So the effect of 9/11 is still being felt today. In addition to that, by not prosecuting the people who performed 9/11, they're still out there. And now the question is, what's going to come next? So it's generally not a good idea to let criminals roam free anyway.
I like the way you just stated that. That's pretty obvious. Yes, it's generally not a good idea to let criminals roam free. That's a great line. I think we'll have to put that in the next pamphlet that we write, because it's so true. I mean, when you apply that in the case of just petty crime, if somebody were to break into the grocery store and steal a bunch of items, produce, you'd say, well, we should catch them, because it's likely that if they got away with it this time, they may repeat it. Same goes with 9/11. If you allow people to bring down big, tall skyscrapers, tallest in the country, in front of everyone, and obvious controlled demolitions, and then blame it on airplane impacts and random fires when the science proves that that's not the case, then you're going to let them get away with the next thing too, because you're surrendering your vigilance. You're telling them that you're just not going to look into anything that they do, and they're going to become more emboldened, and the next time it might even be worse. So that is exactly why we still continue on this fight over a decade later. And then generally people echo those same sentiments. It kind of scares me when I hear people say, why bother? That was over 10 years ago. It's in the past. I don't even understand that mentality, so I can't even explain it. It baffles me. So, you had something to say? Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was going to add, you could always say that they're just being, soft on crime. And we look for things we can use against different segments of the public. And, sometimes you're talking to a hardcore, military or, police force type person. And really, you can make just an argument that, as we're saying, you need to prosecute crime, and if somebody doesn't believe that we need to prosecute crime, including 9/11, then they're just soft on crime. And you could always use that argument against them. And for some people, that actually does sting a little bit.
Well, they're promoting anarchy, and I'm using the term anarchy kind of loosely. I'm sure somebody who considers himself an anarchist would correct me on what anarchy actually is. But just the general common person understanding of it, they're promoting lawlessness. I mean, when you let something like this fly, when you just let something like this go and say, I'm not going to do anything about it. That's what you're...
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people are realizing today that the country is on the wrong path. I think polls show that, and in lots of different ways. Many people were against the Wall Street bailouts, right? And the lack of prosecutions for all of the Wall Street fraud, the fact that they changed the accounting rules to allow the Wall Street banks to value their assets at what they think they're worth rather than what the market would say they're worth. It's just the corruption now is really getting out of control, and in many different ways, and people see that now. But a lot of people are, even though they see that, they don't know what to do about it. And so, if you're looking for an advantage of 9/11, I think it's really got a strong advantage in two ways. One is that the obviousness of the lie is there, and you can just look at Building 7 freefall, as we've been talking about, to show that the official explanation is wrong. And the second thing that's important is the consequences of the lie. And it's difficult to come up with an issue where the consequences have been so dire. And so we put those two together, and that really gives us an opportunity now to be successful at prosecuting this if we wanted to. And once people realize that the 9/11 story is a lie, they become aware that the mainstream media is not on their side. And that's actually a very key step for a lot of people. And once that happens, then, all bets are off. What else are we not being told? And that just tends to wake people up. In fact, I was just talking to somebody who I go to the shop frequently, and I dropped off the DVD there for one time, and I would ask them to put my brochures down, and they would kind of roll their eyes a little bit and go, I was a good customer, so they let me do that. And so I kept going back and asking if they watched the DVD. They never did for a while. And finally I went back and talked to the husband, and he said, oh, my wife watched it. She's become a real truther now, a conspiracy theorist. And so I went back and talked to her finally, and she's like, oh, shook my hand. Thank you so much for letting me see that video, because it really opened up her eyes to everything. And she's got her own, Facebook group now and spreading the word to other people. But just the fact of 9/11, this also goes back to what David Hooper was talking about, how just the Building 7 or the 9/11 issue is a way that can wake people up and to look at everything.
Right, because when the lie is so big and so obvious once you actually see it, it's like, what the heck have they been lying to me also about? When you start looking at all these other things. That's why I focus so much on 9/11. And 9/11 woke me up. I've historically been in other issues and written about other topics, but now I've kind of zeroed in back on 9/11 because of this reason, because it's the centerpiece and it just pulls the legs out from under all of these issues. That is why it's so important to me. And we've got this new pamphlet out. I talked about it a few weeks ago, like I said before. It's called 9/11 Truth, Good for America. And I explained a little bit about why it's good for America, and people can read the pamphlet. It's not very long. It's a pamphlet. So I encourage everyone to go to ae911truth.org right now and read it. But Dave, why, in your opinion, is this message important? Why is the good for America message so key right now?
Well, here in Oregon, at least in Portland, we've been a little bit not happy with the message that we've been getting from Richard Gage does a lot of great stuff, but when he does a presentation, he basically says, okay, here's information, I'm going to bum you out, now deal with it, right? And it leaves people a little bit depressed. But we need a way to get people inspired, not depressed. And so 9/11 truth, we always use the terminology as the gateway truth. Once you discover that, then it opens up everything, and then that's a good thing. So we look at it as a vehicle to having, being a catalyst for a second American Revolution. Hopefully a peaceful revolution. If enough people wake up in time, it can be peaceful. It's really an information revolution. And so, and also going back to something that one of the psychologists said in the Experts Speak Out video, which was excellent, talking about how countries are like people. They make mistakes. But, and so the United States has made mistakes, but, every country is making mistakes these days, and in the past they've made mistakes. So no true crime in that. If we could, though, from the inside, from the American people on up, fix ourselves, issue, the apology to the world that, we screwed up, we're sorry, we'll try to do better, we'll try to fix what we broke. The rest of the world would be in awe of us. And we could, hold our heads high again, proud to be Americans. That's really that's the message that I want to get across to people.
Right, and that's so true, and I don't think Americans are used to this idea that things can go wrong, but you can come back from it. I mean, we've had some pretty terrible things in our past. Slavery was pretty awful, but we ended it, and we went through some struggles afterwards, but we still continue the same mantra of America being great. And even though what we're going through right now is bad, in the big span of human history, we have not lived in this reality for very long. Therefore, we can come back from it and we can still move forward without this making too big of a blemish in our history. And as the pamphlet states, this could be one of the greatest things that Americans ever did, because in one sense we look at countries as an individual, but sometimes we need to step back and realize, no, it's made up of individuals, and not every individual is good. Some are good, some are bad, and it's the ability of a society to weed out the bad individuals who are responsible for making things go wrong. It's that society's responsibility to do that process and fix itself. And this will show our resolve, our ability to be the country we've always pretended to be. And that, I think this would set tyranny back on its ear for over 200 years, not just with events like the 9/11, false flag, whatever, but just on anything any bad person may want to do who has some power, because they're going to learn from this example that they may not be able to get away with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, why do you think so many Americans are so afraid to face this reality? Obviously, you and me see this as good for America, as the title of the pamphlet says. But why do you think we are so different from the general rank and file out there? What, in your opinion, is causing Americans to fearfully run from this issue?
Well, so I spend a lot of time in the public talking to people, and I will get into this, I think, more later as a petition gatherer. So when people discuss with me, they don't know right away that I'm a 9/11 truther, so I get a pretty broad segment of the population to talk to me, at least people who will respond, who will talk to a petition gatherer. And what I find is that at least where I go, which happens to be maybe a good place, it's nearby a Portland State University campus, so I pick up a lot of students. A lot of those kids already know the truth about 9/11, or they suspect something's not right about it, and so they're happy to sign the petition, and they're on our side. And I don't know what the percentage is. It's maybe 20% or so who will say, absolutely, I want to sign right now, and they watched Loose Change, or they watched Zeitgeist, or something like that. But then you get about maybe a quarter of the people who are people you're talking about, maybe, that just want no part of it. They think that I'm a kook, and they just walk away shaking their head. And I don't know that it's possible that when all their friends are truthers, they'll become truthers too, or maybe their friends will never be truthers, and they'll go to their grave, believing in fairy tales. And I don't know what's going to happen to them. But the interesting people are in the middle, and I find that there are a lot of people that are like us. I mean, they're like me before I saw the website for the first time. I assumed back then that any reporter who could break the story would win a Pulitzer Prize. And all reporters would want to be that reporter. So I was expecting that the news media, since they didn't discover anything, that there's nothing there. So that's the mistake. That's why we have to get the reality of the news media out to people. But the people I'm talking to today, Autumn, still think that way. They don't even know about Building 7. They're like, they really literally are kind of shocked and surprised to see the 3-panel picture of Building 7 going down. So, but they're open-minded about it, at least when they're talking to me, and they go home with the information. So I think that our biggest problem, is this is a problem that if we could solve, we would win, and that's the problem with the mainstream media blacking out coverage of the the truth about 9/11 to the masses. So we have to find some way to reach these people.
You know what I worry about? I worry about the apathy and when it becomes a big joke. And, I mean, making a big joke out of it is somewhat of acceptance of it, I guess. But, I saw this when I was in the Peace Corps in Uzbekistan, when certain things would come up, issues with, for instance, you're trying to get a school program going, and they've suddenly banned all public demonstrations, so you can't hold the little event you had with the kids. There's a guy standing there with a gun slung around his shoulder, preventing you from going to the auditorium, and so these kids have worked hard for this, and it's not going to happen. And when somebody just says, give them a few dollars as a joke, and they make a big joke out of the tyranny that they're facing there, it's sort of an acceptance of the reality and an acknowledgement of it, but it's also a surrender to it, in my opinion. And that's kind of like what I see now. It's gone from people viciously attacking you for talking about this, or just making fun of you as a conspiracy theorist, to now more people know about it, have heard about it, agree with you, and it's kind of become a joke. Like, of course, Building 7 was a controlled demolition. Of course, they're lying about 9/11. Same old, same old. That's just how the government works. And I don't know how you deal with that, or how you rip people away from the joking acceptance of this and get them back to a place of realizing that this is serious and that we need to do something about it, and acknowledge it. Otherwise, we can't move forward into the future positively.
Well, first of all, we don't need everybody. You know, somebody famously said that a revolution can be started by, I think, 10% of the population if they're active enough or something like that. So if we were to simply go after the people who were susceptible to our message and who cared, that would be good enough. And also, there are segments of the population that are very interested and very caring, and a lot of older people fit in that category. In fact, if I have to pick somebody to talk to, I'll pick a 55-year-old woman, a grandmother type, because older women seem to listen, and they really care about the country and the people in the country. They have grandkids, so there are, maybe if you focused on the different segment of the population, you might have a completely different viewpoint on how people take this issue. I mean, obviously, there's a wide spread of reactions to this, but my position is that you just look for the people who are receptive to the message and who care about it, and focus on them. And I think there are enough of them to make a difference.
Now, this kind of goes into my next question because, and you've mentioned this about you always start with the free fall, and picking and choosing who you approach with it. My next question was, what are some of the best ways that we can approach people with this information that you found?
Yeah, that's a good one. So a lot of people like to go out and do, events where they will have people out on a street corner or somewhere with a table perhaps and hold up signs and do street actions. And I think those are good. And I think we should do more of those too. And it's easy for people to do that because they have a lot of friends around and kind of supporting each other. And even if, it's hard to ridicule, a group of people, for being a nutcase truther. So there's a little bit of safety and all that, more fun in that kind of activity. But you can't really do that, every day. And we need to be out on the street doing stuff every day. And so I look for things that an individual can do. And I've tried a lot of different things. I've gone to coffee shops with questionnaires, tried to get people interested, and that doesn't seem to work too well. I've gone up to people with a brochure and said, "Do you want to talk about 9/11?" And some people say yes, but it's difficult to do that. You get the rejection that you can get is, it kind of can wear you out after a while. And you have to really be in a tough mood to do that. What I have found is to approach people as a petition gatherer is worked best of all, and it also because it obviously is a way to collect petitions, which is a side benefit. We'll talk about that later, maybe. But if you go up to somebody and just holding up a clipboard and say, "Hey, do you got a second?" They take you as a petition gatherer. They have no idea what you're trying to get them to sign. And then I just give them a simple 6 or so line spiel. I say, "We have a petition drive for a new 9/11 investigation." And then I watch them very carefully to see what their reaction is. Some people just grab the clipboard out of my hand and say, "Absolutely, I want to sign that thing right now." And it's kind of nice to see those people. But I look for the reaction, and then I quickly mention that I'm with architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, because no matter what happens, I want them to know about this organization. We have a great brand name, right? Architects, engineers, 9/11 Truth. And then I say, we've studied the 3 tower collapses in New York, and the official reports don't match the evidence. And then I say, I'll just ask if they want to sign the petition. And at that point, you get people who sign, others that just walk away and say no. But the really interesting group are the ones who just stand there. They're stunned. And, they don't move. They just look at you, and it's really, I don't know what you can compare it to, like, a deer in the headlight kind of a look. They don't know what to say. So here you can quickly, get your, 3 or 4 lines in. And I first of all ask them if they know about Building 7. And they always say no. And then that's why I break out the street brochure and show them the 3-panel sequence. And then, I go into the free fall of Building 7. And then if they are interested, I'll talk about some of the other evidence, usually the molten metal under the 3 debris piles and the iron microspheres, and sometimes the nanothermite found in the dust. And a lot of those folks don't sign, which is okay, but I do send them back home with a brochure and a little flyer that I send out with them that has a description of videos that they can watch. So I think that's, to me, that's my most effective way to reach people who wouldn't knowingly talk to a truther.
I think that's a great idea. You're approaching them with a petition, so it seems like you've got business to do. At least you're giving that impression when you do. And obviously you are collecting names for the petition, so you actually are doing something, but it's a good way to inform people, too, people who may not be aware. And there's lots more growing every day, those numbers, who will grab that clipboard like you described and say, yeah, where do I sign? I know about this, and thank you. Because once you uncloak yourself to them, they will do the same, because they're all immediately feeling a kinship with you. They may have been afraid to talk with their immediate people, their friends, their family members who may not be awake to this, but now that they know that you know, they're more willing to be open about it. I always compare it to being somebody or finding somebody on a deserted island, and you're like the Coast Guard coming by, and they're ready to come swimming out to you, ready to talk to you about all of the facts that you may know, have been going over, rehashed, sick of hearing about, and saying, Building 7 wasn't even hit by an airplane, you know that? And it's like, oh yeah, I always entertain it. It's like, yeah, I know, isn't that crazy? I mean, but they're always glad to join and do whatever they can once they know that there's other people out there just like them speaking openly. Something that we used to do when I was first starting to wake up to this, I had a buddy that was already awakened to some of this. He didn't have all the technical info. A lot of the technical knowledge and facts weren't even available yet. I don't think NIST admitted to free fall yet, but he just knew instinctively, and he was right there in New York, that there was more to 9/11, that there had to have been some kind of controlled demolition going on, and he would have very loud conversations with me on the subway. We would be talking about that very openly, and what that does is it's a conversation between us two. Other people don't have to participate or give some kind of reaction, but you can see them looking at their books on the subway or their newspapers, kind of glancing in our direction. You can, if you kind of glance in their direction, you can see the thought process going on. You can see that they're listening to the conversation and they're soaking it in. So that's something else people can do as well, because you're less likely to get somebody jumping into your conversation and putting themselves out there like that to argue with you or give a reaction. But if you have a conversation, now don't shout it, but if you have a conversation that's loud enough for the people next to you to hear, they can get information that way. It's like listening to a radio for them. So that's something that I can throw out there.
Yeah, that looks great. That's a good idea. And I've seen that happen once or twice myself. I was talking to somebody in a coffee shop, and at a big table, community table, and I didn't want to talk to the guy to my left because he had his 2 kids with him, and I usually don't want to talk to people about 9/11 when they have kids. But after the other guy and I got done talking, and the guy with the kids approached me and said, hey, that's very interesting what you're talking about there. And he asked me if I had any information I could give him, and he took it home with him. So, yeah, that's a good strategy if you can find somebody to have a little, loud discussion with. That's anything you can do to get it out there for people, because, like we're saying, the TV is not going to tell them. So, got to find other ways.
I'm coining the term now, human radio. Be a human radio approach,
right?
To get the information out there. Now, you talk about approaching certain types of people, and about how sometimes maybe older people are more receptive if they're awakened to it. I think it's kind of touch and go. If an older person's awakened to it, and I don't want to get into stereotyping people, but if an older person is more awakened to it, then they'll be very receptive. If they're not, if they don't want to even go there, they'll be very non-receptive to it. But the younger people need to be reached out to as well, because steal the line from the song, the children are our future. Teach them well and let them lead the way, I guess. But so we got to reach out to them too. But do you find that the military groups like police officers, firefighters, do you find that they may be more important? And I don't want to load the question with my own bias, but but there are groups of people who have more influence within our society. Or do you feel that it's important to awaken everybody equally? There's different camps within this kind of activist thinking or strategy planning. What do you think?
So my objective is to first is to think about what I'm trying to achieve and what the group is trying to achieve, and we state that we're trying to get Congress to fund a new independent investigation. So for me, Congress doesn't really care about how many police officers are truthers or how many engineers and architects are truthers. They care about how many people in their district are truthers and who are, badgering them. It doesn't matter what their profession is. It probably matters more if they're registered voters. But so I think it's true that, if we had all the engineers, talking about this on our side, that would be better than having all of the, bakers or cooks or chefs doing it. But I'm looking at raw numbers, and for me, I look for people who are the easiest to reach. So this is my personal view. I think that it's more important to get certain groups, but my objective is to get numbers, so I look for the easiest people to reach. And going back quickly to the bit about the older people, I think it's the women are more receptive than the men. However, and I think that's true across the board a lot of times. But also, when you get into the issue of who cares the most, though, if you find an older man who will listen to you, those guys tend to care a lot about this country compared to a person, deep in their career, or even maybe a teenager or a young 20s person. So I take it, I tend to agree that there's some people who are older, their brains are just ossified. They can't take in anything new, and those you just have to write off. But the ones who do understand the issue, they tend to care more. When it comes to the kids, though, this is an interesting one, because I spent a lot of time next to Portland State, and I'm talking to kids that were in first grade when 9/11 happened, and they have no emotional attachment to the official story, which is a real advantage for us. A lot of those kids are really ready to learn the truth, and they're open to it. And I really believe that if we could put people next to every campus in this country doing what I'm doing, then it wouldn't take us very long for a new investigation to appear, because the new people are ready. The ones who are in college, universities, in their younger 20s, late teens, they're ready. We just have to go out there. It's our fault that there's no investigation now. It's just that the truth movement needs to get off its butt and get out there and talk to people more.
Do you think the young people can be as passionate as the people who lived it and watched the world literally change? For instance, when I was a kid, I would hear about the JFK stuff, and my mom was very into that issue, and I watched maybe some documentary on that, and I said, oh my God, wow, that's crazy. And then I think I flipped the channel and put on pro wrestling or something like that, because it didn't happen in my lifetime. I didn't really see the shift in the world that came as a result of the event. It took something happening in my lifetime, big and on TV, like 9/11, to really awaken me to the bigger picture here. Do you think that we can invoke passions in young people to realize why this is important? Or, first of all, do you see that passion? I should ask. And then if not, or if you see it lesser in the younger people, how do we invoke that passion to make them realize that this event that happened when they were still really little is major and needs to be taken on? This issue needs to be championed.
Well, going back to Kennedy, there's been no investigation since the Warren Commission. real one, to determine criminally who did the assassination. And so the older people at that time, who supposedly were, should have been more passionate, didn't do anything about it. So I don't know that being old versus being young is a deciding factor here. I think the deciding factor is that we have the internet, and this stays alive, and we have now so much blatant video evidence that those buildings were blown up so we have a big advantage. And I think I don't really know right now whether older people or younger people are more passionate about this. I see some of it on both sides, but I don't have a good measure of where there's more of it. But I just see it as a big individual thing. Some people just seem to care more than other people.
And it's an interesting question that just popped into my head. I think the internet is a big factor. I've said that before on the show. Do you think if 9/11 had happened in 1985 or 1990 that we would even have a 9/11 Truth Movement?
Yeah, but I think it would not be as successful as, are we successful today? Not very, but it would have been less successful than we have achieved today. It's important that we have the internet. If the internet is taken down in a false flag, then we're going to need to do something. Or then it's going to be really tough for us.
I think that the more people communicate, and you see this, we were always taught how the printing press revolutionized the world and got more people, made more people literate, and it also got more people sharing information with each other and led to changes for the better in our planet. I think the internet is helping, and I think the internet is generating the energy for this cause, because whenever you get people together to share ideas and compare notes, then that's where innovation comes from. That's where real knowledge springs from. So the internet is really changing the face of our world, just like other innovations have done. Any time that people can communicate with each other, good things happen. So I wanted to throw that in there. I think if 9/11 had happened in 1985, we would have some people maybe on shortwave radio, maybe a few newsletters that go out to some folks, but it would have been very limited. And now we've managed to wake everybody up to the scientific reality of what happened in New York on 9/11 so much that it's like it put a big jagged scar across the official story's face. So even if the internet disappeared tomorrow, our imprint is still there. We've already made our mark, and so that will carry on into the future. Now, I want to know from you, what does victory look like? What is the end game for you? What do you want the final chapter to be? Is it an acknowledgement, a confession? Is it 9/11 controlled demolition on the front page of the New York Times, or do you see victory in other ways?
Well, so I do see my objective, and I think the organization's objective, is to get that new investigation funded by Congress. So I'm looking for awareness to be more widespread, and also that awareness being converted more into activism, at least a demonstration of awareness. And I don't have the answer here, but one way we could do this is by getting the petition count way up for the AE 9/11 Truth Petition. That way, let's say 5% of somebody's constituents in their district here in Oregon, and my congressperson, I can talk to them or their rep and say, we have 5% of the people in your district now to sign the petition for a new investigation. And the trend is that we're getting 1% more every 3 months. Do you want to get serious about this? And then that will spur other on to run as truthers. And at some point, it could work out that the people at the very, very top of the conspiracy will have two options. Either they're going to have to fight us, or they'll just make the decision, the very top people, just to leave if they haven't left already. Say, well, let's just sit this out. We had our good run. Let's go to our desert island or wherever we're going to go and hide out for the 20 years and come back later and try it again, something else maybe. But leaving the people, in the middle to fend for themselves. At that point, then we can expect to see the rats turning on each other, and then deals for immunity being given and prosecution. So I don't see anything short of at least the middle layers being prosecuted to be anything resembling a victory.
And finally, in our last couple of minutes in this interview, common question I always ask, it's a good question to end on, hope. What gives you hope? What makes you keep on doing this? What makes you think that we're going to have what you just described in the end?
Well, I don't necessarily think we're going to have that. So I would say I'm not optimistic, but I'm at least encouraged by the reaction I get from people who don't already know about it, but who are willing to listen and learn about it. So if nothing else, I would keep doing what I'm doing because it gives me a chance to talk to people who know about this, who are open about it, and it really does help to keep me sane, that there is actually it's a relief valve for me, and it's a way to convert some anger into something positive. Whenever I teach the evidence to a new person, it's just my little way of getting back at the people who are trying to get away with this crime. So I'm not super optimistic right now. I would be very optimistic if we had 1,000 people out, doing things that I'm doing and things that you're doing. I think if we're not successful, it really is our own fault at this point because we have enough good information to share with people. So it's just a matter of doing the best you can, and it's like military service. I'll do what I can for a period of years to make this better, and it'll just be a little bit of service. And if it works out, that's great. If it doesn't, then I have to go to Plan B. Maybe it means leaving the country. I don't know.
And folks, if you go to ae911truth.org right now, first of all, you can save Fura's articles when they show up on there, but you can also go to the rotating banner at the top that says, "You can make a difference. Wanted, courageous volunteers to do outreach for AE911 Truth." It starts with your support, and you can volunteer right on the page. Do exactly what Dave is saying so that we can get what we're looking for. We're going to get that great awakening, that 9/11 Truth spring for America. And as more people realize that 9/11 Truth is good for America, and the first step is by volunteering and doing whatever you can. Dave, I want to thank you for coming on 9/11 Freefall.
My pleasure. Nice talking to you, Andy.
Remember, you can hear this program every Thursday night on No Lies Radio at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific. You can also download the show by going to 911freefall.com. This is Andy Steele saying have a great week. Good luck.